Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to our white hot edition of After the Buzzer. The Heat took down the Chicago Bulls, took down the Atlanta Hawks, advanced to the playoffs as the first 10 seed ever, and we are going to talk all about the upcoming Cleveland Cavaliers first round series. Thrilled to be joined by Amy Audibert, one of the best in the business, on the radio call for the Heat, in the pregame show, in the postgame show. Amy is awesome. She's going to bring all sorts of information to this show. And before we move on to Cleveland, though, I want to ask Amy, first of all, how are you? And second of all, you were there. You were courtside for that Atlanta, whatever that was. It was an incredible game. Were there any tales from behind the scenes, from the flight over? Like, when did you guys get in? What was going on after that game ended?
Okay, well, you asked how I'm doing and how was last night. They kind of go hand in hand. I'm still kind of like, after one of those games where you're just so thankful that your team walked away with the win. It was, as we all saw it, I thought it was a pretty awesome basketball game. Super entertaining. I thought both
Yeah.
teams competed and played really hard. Miami had the lead for almost, probably 80% of the game. But as we know, sometimes that 20% or maybe even less than that might end up sending you home. But I mean, it was amazing. It was one of those games where like even I was like definitely shaking as I'm calling, not because I want to, but it's just happening. And really, it was just that overtime, right, where Miami was able to break away, and it's those nip and tuck games that are going to come down to a couple possessions and a couple swings. And like I said, you're just so grateful that it's the Miami Heat that kind of made the shots and came up with the stop. So it was awesome, but also just afterwards, it's just everyone just gets to take a deep breath and smile for a second and just be like, really take those couple hours to be proud because this team really has had to fight through a lot. I know it's been said a lot, but it has to be said, right? It is what it is. And so just to have that moment of just being able to be a little lighter, I guess, because I think everyone wakes up in Cleveland this morning and you weren't thinking about last night anymore. Now it's back to that super tense, super locked in, super focused, and you hope that you're sitting here for quite a while.
Yeah, it was really Davion and Tyler were obviously awesome down the stretch there. And it's funny, we're going to talk about all these X's and O's and all the details about this upcoming series. But that game, sometimes the games just come down to getting buckets.
Yeah.
And they were just making shots, making incredible shots. And the thing I'm going to remember, other than Tyler and Davion, real quick, is there were some bounces like that Wiggins tip in rebound, that Bam kind of loose ball that went right into Haywood's hands. Man, those are the things that turn a playoff series. They can turn a playoff game. It's just amazing how things come down to those very, very little things, no matter all these broad, big top umbrella things we're going to talk about. So, we've got Cleveland coming up. And when the play-in situation was sort of, coalescing, when it was coming together, we knew it was probably going to be you have a chance to play Cleveland or Boston. And if it was Boston, I'm sure you and I could sit down almost without doing any more research because there's so much history there, right? That is a matchup that's ingrained in all of our personalities and souls at this point. Cleveland's a blank slate entirely. The Heat have never played in the playoffs, and even the regular season matchup with them this year, they play before Christmas. Those rosters are completely different. Then both teams make a big trade at the deadline. The Heat play them in January. They were kind of in the middle of making that trade. They didn't have, half the guys that were going to be coming over who are now in the rotation. These teams never really played each other fully healthy. The Heat almost won in Cleveland in March. The Cavs were, they pulled it out down the stretch with a bunch of big threes, but the Heat didn't have Tyler, didn't have Kalel. So we're kind of just going off of what we think. A lot of our gut, a lot of our research, our instincts here. And I asked Amy, what are the top 5 storylines, the top 5 puzzle pieces that need to come together for the Heat in this series? And I'm bringing my top 5. We don't know. We have not told each other what we're bringing to the table here. So this should be a very organic reaction experience. And Amy, I'm going to throw it to you first. We're going to count backwards, 5 to 1. What is your 5th most intriguing puzzle piece storyline of this series?
Yeah, so the fifth one, maybe the more obvious one, is containing. I think containing the perimeter is going to be monumental for the Miami Heat. We know Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, like understanding and totally respecting how awesome and dynamic those two guys have been. But for me, it still starts with their dynamic guards, right? Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell. This is gonna be fun. Donovan and Davian, and don't mess them up. Donovan Mitchell, Those two guys, if Miami can't contain them from the perimeter in the open court or in the half court, it's tough because that's where those other two big guys really, really thrive. Obviously, they're set up with great opportunities. But when you look at the paint, Miami in what the first game they tied it. But to your point, the regular season games, you could go to each one and say why like you don't lean into it too much. The first game, the one that Miami won, Miami tied them in the paint, but the other two games, Miami lost the paint, one by 30, one by 14. And so those are pretty tough numbers. And interesting enough, you were the one that brought up that high paint area that Miami's been really good at getting to, in particular, Tyler. Well, in this matchup, Cleveland's been getting to that area quite a bit. I actually have the numbers here. The high paint, they're taking 26 shots a game from the high paint. They're shooting 51% on those attempts. Those tend to be open shots, right? Because those are in that mid-range area. So containing those guys, especially, but then also like making sure you're not dropping too much to the rim.
Yeah, Cleveland's interesting because, like Chicago and Atlanta, they're playing teams and we're playing them, and they have guys there. Maybe there's a non-shooter on the floor. There's only one or two ball handlers. Cleveland, all five of their guys, almost at all times, are live. They're live bodies. They've got a ton of good shooting, but they'll have their starting lineup. They'll have Garland, Mitchell, Mobley, and Allen out there, but they'll be running actions for Max Strus.
Yeah.
And old friend Max Strus, we all really enjoyed him, but they'll be running actions through their fifth guy in the lineup, or Ty Jerome. And then all their other guys, the all-stars, can capitalize on the space those actions are making. There's not guys – Cleveland doesn't have guys just standing there. So that makes it, to your point, even tougher to contain because you're worried about all five guys on the floor at the same time. So my number 5 is similar. It gets into those upper paint shots, the high paint that you were talking about. My number 5 is, can Miami zone Cleveland? So Miami obviously they've been running the most zone in the league for years now. Cleveland actually ran the second most zone in the season this year. Kenny Atkinson kind of brought that to this team. They incorporated it more. I think Max Strus might have given them a few Miami Heat pointers on how to run the zone. But the Cavs have been kind of a tricky team for the Heat to zone over the years. The Heat have used it quite a bit against them because, by nature, the zone will limit the bodies getting to the paint, how the paint touches in the lower paint. And when you're running two bigs, that's what you want to take away. But over the last 3 years, Cleveland has scored 1.16 points per possession against Miami's zone. That's over 188 possessions. And this year alone, they scored 1.14. So that's not a great number for the Heat. And Cleveland gets creative. They put Donovan Mitchell in the middle of the zone. They've got Mobley there. Both Mobley and Allen are good ball movers. They can make plays out of there. And then that midseason trade we talked about, DeAndre Hunter, in that game in March, they put DeAndre Hunter in that upper paint spot right at the nail. And when Miami went up like 6 or 7 in that fourth quarter, Hunter's just there. He's making floaters. He's making mid-range jumpers. He is very comfortable in that spot. So can Miami zone? The Cavs are a really good half-court offense. We have to respect that. They can score in a variety of different ways. They don't only have to do like one or two angles, one or two type of play sets. And we know Eric Spoelstra wants to switch it up. He wants to kind of slow the game down. He wants to make the other team hit his changeup in addition to the fastball, in addition to the curveball. It's just a question of, can Miami do that effectively? We know they're going to stagger their bigs. Is the zone going to be there? And on the other side, the Cavs are going to throw zone out there too. So that's good for the Heat because the Heat, they want to take threes. They can get threes up against the zone too. But when the Cavs zone, if the zone with their size, there's a lot of size out there too. So that'll open up Bam for those upper paint shots. That'll open up Tyler, hit a pick and roll, get downhill, take his floater. He's become one of the best floater guys in the game. Zone's going to be a real battleground here.
Yeah, so basically as you're talking, I'm thinking that you're playing with fire both teams a little bit, right? If you're going to sit in a zone, because both teams are capable of hitting a lot of threes. If you're Miami, the one thing I would say you lean into is you've actually held Cleveland under their 3-point averages in the 3 matchups that you've played. They've shot 36%, so just under their 38% average. Now they have been shooting from the field. It was 49.6, almost 50% from the field. So the twos have been killing you a little bit more from the threes. And we saw it in the Boston series last year, right? If Miami wants to come out and hit 22, 23 threes, like that's tough to stop. So let's hope for one of those nights.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So what is your number 4?
Yeah, number four. I mean, I have cards, right? Like I've done this like card number four. My number four is like let's just get into the matchups.
Mhm.
Because when you start kind of going who's going to guard who, and I didn't go who from Miami is going to guard from Cleveland. I went the other way. Who from Cleveland is going to guard guys from Miami? Because to your point in that last meeting in particular, no Wiggins either. No
Mhm.
Wiggins, nowhere, no Tyler in that last meeting. But it to me again, it goes to the added idea that Miami is finally maybe at its most fullest form that we've seen all season,
Mhm.
with Andrew Wiggins, who is clearly starting to really feel like himself again. And he's a game changer and he's an X factor. And so when you look at matchups, we know that, of course, Jared Allen's probably going to start off on Kalel. I went back and watched film, and Cleveland's actually been starting Max on Tyler. I don't know if they'll keep that there or not. I'd wonder if they're going to throw Davion or Donovan. Here we go, Donovan or Garrett. Darius underneath
We're all gonna
Tyler,
do it,
right?
right?
And try to kind of like get underneath him a little bit more, which at times can be pretty uncomfortable. But they've been going to Max. Max fights over screens. He's really tough that way. And then Ty Jerome off the bench has been getting on Tyler too. So those are the matchups that I'm kind of just digging into. But then, so the layer is, well, then who's going to guard Wiggins? Is it going to be Garland? Is it going to be Mitchell? Because Wiggins has a size advantage in those, and can he get to his spots there? That's where I'm kind of like, I think that's going to be an interesting storyline and something to keep your eyes on. We know Miami's defensive versatility. We know that they'll kind of throw the kitchen sink at you at times. And so I'm really curious to see how Kenny Atkinson and his staff is going to approach this Miami Heat lineup, because they haven't seen this Miami Heat lineup yet.
That's funny. My number four is also matchups. We had the exact same train of thought here. But a little bit, just to go on to what you're saying, like I have it in bold right on my sheet here. Can they get Wiggins that matchup? They've gone to Wiggins a lot for early offense. They've tried to kind of get him activated early, try and find those matchups. And I think they're going to be able to do it because people see Cleveland running two bigs and they think, oh, they probably run a lot of drop coverage. Like there's a lot of that. And there is some. But the Cavs actually switch a ton. They switch the second most in the entire league. So, and they will give up. They will trust Garland. They will trust Mitchell. He's a strong guy, so it's not like you can just easily post him up. But they will trust them with pretty easy switches just to keep the other teams flattened out. So if the Heat want to get Wiggins those post ups, I think those are going to be crucial. Getting the offense going early, but then late game when it's tight, when like there's a lot of constrained space and airspace, when you're trying to run those pick and rolls, you get Wiggins on a switch. If you know that's there for you, that gives you a bit of a comfort zone, knowing that you can get those matchups when you need them. And if Wiggins scores enough, then you start getting two on the ball. Guys start coming over to help. They soft double. Cleveland will flood the zone a ton and bring guys across the zone. So if, Wiggins starts drawing two, then you can start skipping over, and then you've got those weak side corner threes, flip them up to the above the break threes. That stuff can be there. You've just got to make Cleveland react to the matchups that you're punishing. And the other thing about matchups is that in that March game, that was one of Bam's best games of the season, and he was going right at Evan Mobley. In the same way, he goes right at Jaren Jackson Jr. It's a lot of jumpers. There's turnaround jumpers. He was hitting threes. It's hard to sustain an entire game's worth of offense off just those looks. But those are there, and he was getting them right in Evan Mobley's face. And Evan Mobley might end up winning Defensive Player of the Year this year. So, that'll be a great matchup to watch. I just think, they've got to find more than just one matchup at a time. They've got to be able to exploit matchups all over the place. And with Cleveland switching, those things should be there. You just got to make Cleveland,
Yeah,
react to what you're doing there.
and
So
I would
I'll
just
move.
say too,
Yeah.
I would say this is the most complete form of Bam Adebayo we've seen, right?
Yeah.
Maybe ever, in terms of just how he's playing, but also just hit the accountability, ownership. Like he's the leader of this team now, and you feel that every time he's on the court, on both ends of the court, from the start of the game to the finish of the game. So that's not a full card for me, but it's definitely going to be part of this big time
Yeah.
too.
All right, I'll give my number three. I will make you go first every single time here. My number three is, kind of a combination. It's what 3-point team is real for the Heat, because they've been shooting the ball incredibly well over the past 6 weeks to 2 months. I don't think it's been a little underplayed because, they had that little winning streak after losing streak. They had one of the best 2-week stretches of shooting in the history of the league. I mean, it was them and the 2015-16 Golden State Warriors. Like, they were all over the place from three. And, some of that, obviously, you've got Tyler and Duncan. Wiggins has been shooting the ball well. Alec Burks, who's in the starting lineup right now, Burks has been shooting really great. Davion Mitchell is having far and away the best stretch of shooting he's ever had. So, but why I bring up the three-point shooting, obviously they need, a little variance can help. If you go out and make 21 threes, like you said, against Boston like they did last year, or they did against Milwaukee and Boston the year before, that's great. You're going to win games like that, but you can't count on that necessarily to win an entire series unless you're playing Boston in the Eastern Conference Finals. And then, then the entire world is like, what the heck is going on? But, for example, the Cavs went into that Orlando series in the first round last year, and they really struggled from three. They shot 28% from three in that series. I know they were Cavs fans, don't yell at me. I know Garland and Mitchell were beat up. There was not like the fully formed version of the team. Atkinson wasn't the coach. Different team. But the point is they struggled from three across an entire series. And a little bit of variance there can really help, especially, and this is kind of the dual point of my number three, is can that fourth quarter scoring be there for the Heat? Because the Heat are not a team that gets the free throw line a ton. And their fourth quarter offense, as much as it's been a struggle this year, at its core, they're pretty dependent on threes. They're dependent on those upper paint shots, floaters, mid-range jumpers. They need those shots to go in. Against Atlanta, those shots fell. Cleveland, a lot of those shots should be there as well, because Cleveland will give up some catch-and-shoot corner threes. They'll give up stuff in the upper paint. But you've got to be able to make the shots. And, it's a basic analysis. It's not, nobody's going to be like, oh, my gosh, did you hear this point? But it comes down to shot making. And the Heat have been really great at shot making from the arc and on jumpers for 2 months. They've got to be able to sustain that against the Cavaliers.
Yeah, I mean, both teams should be feeling good. And for me, like when I look at Cleveland and this version of the Cavs, I can't even look back to last year. I mean, they've had a historical season. They should feel great about their year. They earned that number one spot. And so they're probably going into this playoff, right? Like with that type of momentum and confidence. And also, listen, like that's been the question for them is their toughness in the playoffs. And now they have a year. They've had a great year. So they're going to be feeling amazing. They should be feeling amazing coming into this series, right? So to your point, I mean, it's a make or miss league at times, right? And you certainly start feeling like that. At this point in the season, you expect a slower game. My number three in particular is the pick and roll. Like we know that this game is still so much predicated on that. But the reason I say that is I went back and started just looking at the post-game reports, the autopsies about which two-man games were killing who, right, in the games. I thought it was so interesting. In the first two matchups against Miami, when you look at direct points, their best two-man games, their screener was Georges Niang in both of those. And I thought that was really interesting that they, number one, I probably just volume, right? I mean, he's great screen. We saw last night. Guy knows how to use his body. I don't know if a lot of teams would like to put Bam Adebayo in a screen and roll because of the switchability, right? Like you don't always bring a defender like that into the pick and roll option. I imagine they'll try to call up Kalel and try to get Ware in those actions. And then you have to start making decisions. Are you dropping? Are you hedging? Because I think Jarrett Allen is a tremendous slipper, right? I mean, at his size and his length, he's a lob threat. So that's a challenge. But then on the other end, right? If you're and this is why I love the chess match of the series, because the Tyler Bam two-man game is always going to give you some kind of option out of it. We've seen Duncan and Bam really snap into those handoffs. They've got great chemistry. But one of the better looks in the two-man game, funny enough, was that third game with no Tyler, no Wiggs, no Kalel. It was Kyle Anderson and Bam Adebayo. So
with a little Haywood
exciting.
Highsmith cutting too, right?
Right. And there's your I don't know, X factor. We know Spo's been going to Kyle, and we can see why. I mean, he really does have a point guard's head, and I mean, he knows how to use his body. He's apparently a corner three-point shooter now. I mean, that was fun. But so just to have so many different options to throw a two-man game out there, but with so many different types of players, that could really challenge a defense as well to make decisions.
Yeah, Duncan, it's been going on for years now, but Duncan's ability to run offense when they need him to, and the reactions he causes from defense, still underrated so many years in, and I don't think he really gets enough credit for that. In that March game, a lot of the offense was going through Duncan, and Cleveland was like always aware, where is he, and all that gravity creates so many options, for the Heat getting guys going downhill. All right. So my number two, we've covered this a little bit, but it's the double big duel, right? That it's becoming more and more popular for teams, and I think this is sort of a league trend. People think maybe, oh, the guys they're going back to double bigs. They're going back to this is not what it was in the 90s and the 2000s, right? These teams are going back to double big pairings because the big men have become so skilled that it's a viable option again. Guys are shooting threes. Guys can make plays with the ball in the short roll. This is an evolution of the game. This is not going back to the way things were in any way. And, Allen and Mobley were an incredible duo. They 120.8 offensive rating together. That was something that they weren't really sure in the past whether that two big lineup look was going to work. And then Kenny Atkinson comes in, and it is working, as well as anybody could possibly expect. Bam and Kalel this season, the offense has been, there sometimes. It really helps one or two of them is hitting their threes because those threes are going to be there. The Heat have run some really creative stuff against Cleveland or against any other team. But then all that creative stuff, sometimes when you have Bam and Kalel in the game, you'll still end up with one of them above the break, wide open. Is he going to make the shot or is he going to miss it? So the offensive rating for those two has only been 113.1. That's manageable because the defense has been great, 108.5. It hasn't been their best two-man lineup, but it's been workable, and I'm really interested to see. We know what we're going to get from Bam. This is Ware's first playoff series. There's a lot of weight on him. Spo played him, 22 minutes against Atlanta, so starters minutes, but wasn't going to him at the end of the game. Ware's been really good this year. Can they get to those lobs? The lobs have been a really important part of Miami's offense for the past, 2+ months since they've gone to this pairing. That we've seen bits and pieces where sometimes teams, the Heat go to like an empty corner pick and roll first possession of the game or out of a timeout. And against some teams, that lob, boom, 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 they'll get it 2 or 3 times in the span of 5 minutes. And then there's these smart teams that come in, they're scouted, they know what's coming, and the big guys is dropping back and tipping those lobs. So can they get to those easy relief points? The lobs for Ware have been some of their best relief points, for months now. And can Ware impose his will? I don't expect Ware doesn't have to come out and average 20 and 15 or anything like that. It doesn't have to be that. But can he be physical with Jarrett Allen? Can he get offensive boards? The Cavs are not one of the best defensive rebounding teams in the league, despite their size. So if Ware wants to attack the offensive glass, even though that's not always been a priority for Miami, there might be an opportunity there. So the double big duel, that's my number 2. What do you got?
Well, and I love that. I love the double big duels. I love that there's more big men on the court. A former center, that's my thing. And listen, for Kalel, he's got to be very disciplined, and he can't get in foul trouble. Like, he can't, at least early on in these games. Like, that's going to be very important for this team. My number 2 was the second units, the benches. I think, when you look at playoff runs, I think the best teams have that bench mob. They've got that. We're embracing the second line. The energy changes when we get in the game. And Cleveland, their second unit has averaged 48 points a game against Miami this season, which is a lot. And again, I know the teams are different. Rotations are now different. Miami's averaged just under 34. One of the games, 33 points off the bench came from Nico and Terry. So, they're like Miami's in a totally different place, as is Cleveland. But I just think that the second unit's, it's the game within the game. Not only scoring, but the defending stuff, rebounding, all those little inflection plays. Haywood was incredible last night. How many big plays did Haywood make? We know Davion did his thing, but Kyle, Duncan, and now you wonder, does Spo look at Nico, who has been available? This is a series now. This is not single game. Does Spo look at Pella if he needs him? Pella has proven that he is, he's tough and he's ready. So there's a lot of options for Miami, but we also know the Cavs have some depth that they love too. Ty Jerome, they're Hunter when he's coming off the bench. So there's so many different places these teams can go, but I do think that the second unit matters so much at this point in the season. And so who wins those battles, that could also have a big impact on who wins these games.
Yeah, Nico, whether or not I expect Spo will probably go to him at some point because he's just too talented to keep out of the rotation entirely. Where that role really ends up, we don't know yet. But because of what we were talking about before, because of how Cleveland wants to, or they're willing to overload the strong side of the floor, Nico's size and his passing could be really important just in terms of making those over-the-top passes. We draw a double. If Nico is one pass away, he can flip it really fast to the weak side corner and get Miami threes that way. Could be really important. We'll just see kind of what his role in the rotation is going forward. It's good to have him back, good to have him as an option either way. All right, Amy, what is your number one for Heat Cavs?
Yeah, so my number one, I want to tell you why I went to it. I don't remember. The irony is that UConn just won the women's national championship. But if you remember, probably 10 years ago, I mean, there was no parity. They were going through everybody. No one could touch them. And I remember one year watching the NCAA tournament, and one of my favorite analysts, Debbie Antonelli, she had this top 5 list of like, you have to do this to stand a chance against UConn. And the one thing on the list that it always kind of stays with me when you look at these matchups is you got to believe you can win. Like, to me, that's the biggest thing. When you look at Cleveland and the records, the franchise records they've set, the league records, top 5 in so many different things, like in history, they've been incredible all season. It's tough, and they've had a week to rest, right? They've had a week to prepare, and here's Miami. We do things the hard way. We love it. We embrace it, but you got to believe that you can win. Do I think the Miami Heat think they can go in there and compete and win games? I do. I absolutely believe they can, but I do think that is, and it shouldn't be underrated how important that is. I remember going a couple years ago into Milwaukee, and as the 8th seed, and remember, was that not the first play-in year, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody thought Miami was even going to compete at all. And then when Tyler breaks his hand, the first half of the game, after they were getting into their pick and roll actions, right? Like, it wasn't looking good. And I'll never forget, it was my first year with the team, so I was kind of still getting to know everybody too. I'll never forget thinking, man, these guys they believed they could win. Like, they really did. I remember some of their, side conversations and just their demeanor. Like, they were so focused. They were so locked in. They believed they could compete. They believed they could win. And so they have to bring that same type of toughness and mentality, because this is going to be a very tough series. And Miami's going to have to be so special for 48 plus minutes a night if they want to steal some games here.
Yeah, the Heat are not they are under Eric Spoelstra, they will not ever be a 1-2-3 Cancun kind of group. That is not in their DNA at all. That was such a special run 2 years ago. And it's funny, when you have a run like that, no matter what, from now on until like the end of history, if the Heat are an 8 seed or a 7 seed, everyone will always say, rightfully, they did it then. They have a chance. You can always, it doesn't matter if you have a 3% chance per ESPN in the Eastern Conference Finals. A chance is a chance, right?
And these guys, this is a new version, okay? Because we know what the narratives are going to be. I think this team is okay with embracing that too, right? They're okay with having to wake up every day and show the world that they can compete at a really high level. They showed it last night, right? They've showed it a while the last couple weeks. So I think that this sets up for them. They love this type of challenge and competition.
Yeah, the only word of caution I would have just to the fan base is that team two years ago, a lot of veterans, but that was the season where they set records for clutch games, right, and clutch wins, and we were on top of it. And we have another Miami Heat clutch Heat game, but so this team is a little bit different. They've had their struggles in clutch games, but I think their process has been a little bit better than the results have been. They get a lot of open looks. Their shot quality and clutch performances is strong. They just the threes really haven't been there. So again, if they can catch fire from 3 or just make an average amount of them, I think you could make their clutch results very different.
For me, I just want to jump into in clutch minutes, they shoot the second highest amount of threes, 0.1 under Boston. They're both basically shooting 3. They have one of the worst 3-point shooting percentages in clutch, shooting right around 26%. Again, this is an entire season. I do think this team is shooting better. They're feeling better. They're generating great shots as of late. So if they get into these clutch games and they're the latest version, maybe those numbers aren't as accurate at this point. You'd hope they're not.
And from clutch games, one of the Heat's clutch players, my number one is just Tyler Herro. We haven't talked about him a lot, but Herro's postseason test. I think 2 years ago, you mentioned it, he breaks his hand. That was really, you could tell it was heartbreaking for him because he hadn't been healthy really the playoffs the year before when the Heat were in the Eastern Conference Finals. And Tyler was hoping that series, especially against a Milwaukee team, playing a ton of drop coverage. That was like a tailor-made for Tyler series. And he said at the time, look, like I thought I was going to have my chance to really prove myself in terms of making my name, who I am in this league. Didn't get the chance then. Last year, Jimmy gets hurt. The roster's kind of shuffled about right before the playoffs start. He goes into Boston. Boston is just locked in on him the entire time. And they took away a lot of what he wanted to do. And Tyler realized, like, I'm making this hard on myself, playing the way I am, trying to be, this on-ball all-the-time guy against a Boston team that's switching a ton. They have got every single player on the floor for Boston was a good defender. They would bring two over sometimes if they needed to. So, but there was that game 2, right, where the Heat won. Yes, they hit a lot of threes in that game, but that was where Tyler started to find the blend of, I can play off the ball. I can trust my teammates to find me. I can run off screens. I can create catch and shoot opportunities for myself and use my entire skill set rather than just trying to be the guy on the ball. And he took that blueprint from game 2, went into the offseason, reshaped his entire approach after, going over with Coach Spo. And then he came into this season, obviously, brand new shot profile, cutting out the mid-range, ton of threes. First half of the season, he is shooting unbelievably well. And I think there's this narrative, Amy, where he's not really in the most improved player conversation like I thought he would be, because I think there's this narrative that he fell off a little bit. And I've actually been just as impressed with him in the second half of the season as the first, because once the Heat made that trade, Tyler, again, he's the number one guy. It's like that situation in Boston last year. Teams are keying in on him. Teams are pressuring him up way above the arc. They're trying to run him off the line, keep him from getting to his threes. And he countered that. He found the ways, look, if they're going to push up on me, I'm going to use my much improved handle, get by them, and get to his floaters, get into the paint, get to the rim. He's having, this is one of the best driving seasons, the best driving season he's ever had. Again, Cleveland will switch some, so it won't always be, one guy pushing up, go over the top of screens, and a guy in drop coverage. That lane, Cleveland's not always going to give him that driving lane. But I'm really, really looking forward to seeing, Herro's new approach, his new game put to the test against a very good team, a team that will, again, be locked in on him. Tyler's probably number 1 on the scout sheet, I would assume. And what's Cleveland's game plan going to be for him? That's what I'm watching for game 1 right out of the gate. And that will set the tone for the entire series, because what's Cleveland going to do? And then how will the team counter?
So you're right. The fact that he's not in the MIP conversation is also, when you look at, again, season averages, number 1, 77 games he played this season, 35 minutes a night. He averaged 24, 5 and 6, shooting close to a 50-40-90, close, not quite. 77 nights this season, right? I mean, that's incredible, right? To your point. And this is a guy that I wish young kids that want to play would watch Tyler Herro a little bit and listen to him, because all he does is sit in the gym and work in the off season. He showed up to this season with 20 more pounds of muscle and a buzz cut. That's been the joke. But that, when you look at last night, the way that he had to power through contact, that's his lifting. That's his off season muscle right there. Right. And so everything he does has been built up for these moments, and whether they go his way or not, he earns the right to be there and take those shots because of the work he's put in, right? The confidence comes from demonstrated ability, and sometimes that's behind closed doors and demonstrating to yourself. I love what he said in Chicago 2 weeks ago, right? When he took the shot that didn't go at the end, and he looked right in the camera and he said, I believe in myself. And that's why I think it's so much more easier to get behind Tyler, because we all know how much he works and how much he wants this. So I'm looking forward to this opportunity for him. To your point, I'm sure now you start thinking about Boston last year, and then you look at the year he's had, and he knows he's going to get the kitchen sink thrown at him, right? Of course he is. He has been. What else is new? That has been his season. His teammates are really going to have to step up and do some big things to take a little bit off him. But when it's his time to shine, I expect nothing less. So I'm glad he got a whole a whole card from you.
Yeah, there we go. Well, Amy, it's been awesome. I'm sure you're just like me. This is the time of the season where you just feel alive. You can
Yeah.
feel your heart beating. There's an anticipation for these games. We go through these regular seasons every year, and it's tough not to do this. Sometimes I have to trick my brain not to do it, but I'm just always thinking about the playoffs. Always thinking about the playoffs and what, there's just a magical thing about it. I get into film, I grind the film. I'm getting into all the numbers, getting into the nitty-gritty stuff for analysis, but at the end of the day, there's a little bit of basketball magic, and I'm still a little bit romantic about the playoffs in that way. I love this time of year. I'm really excited to see what this particular group can do for the Heat, what Eric Spoelstra is going to come up with a little prep time, with a full scout report. It's the best time of year. I'm thrilled. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been awesome. And that has been our White Hot After the Buzzer series preview. We will see you soon for every game after the playoffs. And Amy will be in Cleveland. She'll be back soon. We'll see her back in Miami when she gets back. Thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.